Chapter 305, Here Comes a Strong Enemy. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. The ancient abyss sword was very sharp. It pierced the black-winged python's celestial body. She yelled instantly. It passed through its teeth and tongue and flew into its stomach. The black-winged python felt the pain, and its body rolled drastically. A strange howling sound came out from its mouth. Forces of wind nature genuine. She flew out from its body, turning into wind blades that flew in every direction. The waves on the water's surface became even more turbulent. Zhang Yuochen stood calmly in the middle of the storm. He seemed quite tranquil. Whoosh! Under Zhang Yuochen's control, the ancient abyss sword sliced the python's internal organs. It came out covered in blood and landed in his hand. Boom! The black-winged python's body dropped down heavily with a series of giant splashes. A moment later, its giant body floated to the surface. It was more than 70 meters long. Its sturdy body was scary, ferocious and rugged. Every one of its scales seemed to be made of iron, reflecting light like metal. The water was dyed crimson and emanated a strong stench of blood. If Zhang Yuochen had not had the ancient abyss sword and reached the realm of heart integrated into sword, killing the black-winged python would not have been an easy task. Its scales were not ordinary genuine martial arms, they could not be broken. This class 4 medium-level savage beast had finally died under Zhang Yuochen's sword. From then on, the water within 100 kilometers of this area would be much calmer. Zhang Yuochen's toes dipped onto the water's surface. He flew up, as light as a swallow. He flew 100 meters away and gently landed on the black-winged python's body. Its body was full of treasures, like snakeskin which could be made into soft armor. Snake teeth could be made into a poisonous soldier. Even its blood and meat could be eaten once it was processed. This could improve a warrior's physical quality and increase their resistance to poison. However, for Zhang Yuochen, although black-winged python's skin, teeth, and meat were good stuff, he had no interest in them. He had several million spiritual crystals. Couldn't he just buy those? The higher one's martial cultivation was and the more fortune he had, and the higher his vision was. Of course, there was still one thing he wanted. The snake's gallbladder. Zhang Yuochen carefully cut the snake open. He removed its colorful gallbladder and one piece of spiritual brawn weighing more than 100 kilograms. A strong aroma arose from the spiritual brawn. It was like a spiritual dose made of flesh and blood. One would feel refreshed and energetic with just one sniff. A class 4 medium-level savage beast was much stronger than a class 4 lower level, and its spiritual brawn was a nourishing food. The black-winged python was pretty much like a warrior at the advanced stage or dawn state of the heaven realm. It was certainly a formidable savage beast. It was not just 100 kilograms spiritual brawn. Its value was 10 times more precious than all of the snake's flesh and blood combined. Even a warrior at the initial stage of the heaven realm would benefit greatly from it. Zhang Yuochen cut the spiritual brawn into 10 pieces and put them into 10 separate jade containers. He put them away carefully. His eyes lit up as he stared at the fist-sized gallbladder. He was even more excited than he'd been at the sight of the spiritual brawn. The snake's gallbladder was 3 colors, black, white and yellow. 3 colors. This black-winged python had practiced for 300 years. Its gallbladder was equivalent to a 600-year-old spiritual dose. It was a good thing. He put away the gallbladder and went back to shore. He lifted his head and looked to the sky. The sun was setting. It was like a flame burning bright in the sky. Even the water had turned into a golden color. It looks like I won't make it to the Death City today. Zhang Yuochen was not in a hurry. Even though he wanted to unseal Underwater Dragon Palace, he had already waited 3 months. What was one more night? Tonight, I should refine the snake gallbladder and see how much cultivation I can get from it. Zhang Yuochen found a concealed valley and built a fire. He sat by the fire and took out the gallbladder. He processed it, ate it and started to refine it. The energy it contained was very cold. He felt like he had eaten a piece of profound ice. Luckily, he had refined many icing meridians pills before, so he could easily withstand the stream of icy air. He started to practice his right hand's 5-strike technique with the help of gallbladder's yin cold power. Supreme Yin Pulse Sword Wave. His thumb was a sword and pointed out quickly. Swoosh. The air around him became cold suddenly. A pale blue sword wave flew out from his thumb. hitting the stone wall behind the valley with a crash. A giant hole of 3 meters wide was left on the stone wall. It looked like it had been hit by an aerolite. The surrounding stone walls broke and were sealed with a layer of cold. His left thumb's Supreme Yin Pulse Sword Wave had reached the small success realm. TR Supreme Yin Pulse Sword Wave. Tranquility Pulse Sword Wave. Zhang Yuochen's palm kept changing and his right forefinger pointed out. A sword breath flew out from his fingertip, leaving a path of ice on the ground. Bam! There was another giant hole in the stone wall. Its destructive force was pretty much the same as the one before it. He struck out once again. This time he only used his middle, ring and baby fingers. 3 fingers struck out at the same time. Middle Spiritual Pulse Sword Wave. Supreme Abyss Pulse Sword Wave. Lesser Moon Pulse Sword Wave. 3 sword breaths flew out at the same time, leaving 3 more giant gaping holes in the remote stone wall. 2 of the holes were the same size as the former ones. The destructive force of Lesser Meridian Strike had made a smaller hole just 1 meter in diameter. The Blackwind Python's gallbladder was indeed good stuff. It had aided him in practicing Supreme Yin Pulse Sword Wave, Tranquility Pulse Sword Wave, Middle Spiritual Pulse Sword Wave, and Supreme Abyss Pulse Sword Wave to the level of small success. Only Lesser Moon Pulse Sword Wave was still at the beginner level. Zhang Yuochen was still very satisfied. Before coming to Tongming River, he had never thought that he could practice 4 sword waves to the level of small success in such a short time. With his sword wave reaching the level of small success, his power increased several times over. Zhang Yuochen felt that his martial cultivation had improved a lot. It was close to the peak of the final state of the Earth realm. In addition, even his eyesight, hearing and spiritual power had improved slightly. His 5 senses became sharp, and the whole world became clearer. At midnight, Zhang Yuochen suddenly woke up from practice. His ears moved, and he said to himself, I am surrounded. They've caught up with me. I wonder who they are? He had heard their footsteps, breathing, and even heartbeats. Although the enemy was still far away, Zhang Yuochen already knew them very well. The enemies were evil. A few of them had powerful cultivations, even more powerful than Zhang Yuochen's. He could only defeat them if he used all his power. The formidable enemies were getting closer. Zhang Yuochen was still very calm. He picked up twigs from the ground and threw them into the fire. Crack, crack. The firewood began to crack and spark. Rustle. 30 centimeters under the ground, a long metal whip full of sharp barbs was surging forward rapidly like a metal snake. It rushed toward Zhang Yuochen. 3 meters away, it dashed out from the underground with a swoosh sound. It kept spinning round with barbs as it moved toward Zhang Yuochen's neck. Its tip was a 5-inch long spike and emanated a purple glow. Obviously, it was highly toxic. Zhang Yuochen grinned and grabbed a tree branch with his 2 fingers. Spiritual fire genuine chi came out of his fingers. Surrounding the tree branch, it hit the long metal whip. Ding! The tree branch with spiritual fire hit the long metal whip and dispersed the genuine chi it contained. A moment later, the long metal whip flew out again and hit Zhang Yuochen in the back with a swoosh sound. The owner of the long metal whip suddenly appeared from the darkness. It was a woman who appeared to be around 30 years old. She wore a tightly wrapped golden armor around her chest and buttocks, exposing her long snow-white legs and waist. She made a whining sound, like a phantom. She kept striking out the long metal whip. She applied a set of exquisite whips that completely surrounded Zhang Yuochen. The entire valley was full of golden light. Zhang Yuochen sat on the ground with his legs crossed. He was very elegant and comfortable. He kept striking out the tree branches, defeating the long metal whip every time. Phew! Suddenly, a fire arrow with a phoenix tail shot out of the darkness toward Zhang Yuochen. In the blink of an eye, it had flown several kilometers through the valley. It was heading straight toward Zhang Yuochen's glabella. If an arrow could still keep its force after flying several kilometers, the owner must be a top master. He had not only amazing arm strength, but also eyesight that was much better than ordinary warriors. Zhang Yuochen showed a serious expression in his eyes as he grabbed the hilt of the ancient abyss sword. Swoosh! The ancient sword moved from its sheath and showed a brilliant sword light. It formed a crescent-shaped sword breath with a diameter of more than 10 meters in the sky. Bam! The fire arrow clashed together with the sword breath. With a bang, all the spiritual chi in the valley shook. The phoenix feather arrow was exposed instantly. It turned into a large rain of fire, firing out rapidly in all directions. The woman holding the long metal whip stood back to avoid the impact of the fire rain. The rain of fire certainly fell on Zhang Yuochen, but Zhang Yuochen had a 1-meter shield of genuine chi, so the fire droplets fell to the ground and turned to iron sand. Xing. A man holding a red bow and quiver flew out from the darkness like a giant bird.